Tonight. Call meeting order, please. For the approved agenda, March 8th, 2021, moved by Doug, second by Kevin. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Conflict of tutoring interest for the zoning nature thereof. I have a conflict on 8A1, the municipal park land fund. I have 3 severances in process right now on their conflict. They got to find out in order if we move forward. Oh, sorry. Moving forward, we'll step right into the staff reports, the manager of planning, Deputy Clerk Sands, and this municipal park land fund. I'm going to step away there, but it's okay with council. I just step back and this is the conversation. Maybe take a couple of
Okay, so this was prompted by a question, I think, by me about the parkland fees and the changes we made, which I forgotten. We actually approved the schedule of fees. I guess Jason earlier that included this number, but maybe you can just expand on that and bring us up to date on what went into that consideration.
Thank you, and through you, absolutely, Deputy Reed Wise, the information report before you tonight is accompanied by 3 exhibits: parkland bylaw itself, as well as a comparison of neighboring and local municipalities here in Eastern Ontario, as well as a descriptor of some of the fees that we've collected that have been collected over the past few years related to parkland. As mentioned, this was incorporated in our municipal budget that we discussed last fall, I think it was, about introducing a flat fee rate to the parkland as opposed to the upper threshold of 5% appraised value that's currently being utilized, and that is the upper limits set by the province in the provincial policy statement. The biggest, sort of from an information purpose in this meeting, the biggest paragraph or section I'd like to draw attention to is second page towards the bottom, speaking to an attempt in minimizing administrative workload, ensuring conformity with the Planning Act as it relates to the fee structure, as well as expecting or anticipating fees from a parkland purpose moving forward. And staff feel that a set rate of a $2,500 figure is appropriate, given that the appraised value of the lot is not calculated on the lot's value post-approval. Rather, it's calculated on the value of that land that it adds to the greater land holding prior to consent. So I tried to explain in the report that from an example of a 100-acre farm property, if you're severing off a 2.5-acre building lot from the corner of your 100-acre farm, what is the value of your 100-acre farm with that 2.5 acres included within it? And what is the value of that 100-acre farm with that 2-acre excluded? So then you'd be selling a 98-acre parcel as opposed to 100. That difference is really what the value should be from a parkland reserve perspective, as opposed to what's the value of that 2-acre building lot selling on the open market. So that's the way the legislation is written on the day prior to consent. So the fees that you're seeing, I think, may be slightly increased based on the fact of that appraised value being completed post severance as opposed to pre. So I just provided the information report. Hopefully that gives a bit of a background, and I'm happy if I can answer any more questions or provide any more clarity that may have been missed in the reporting. Thank you.
Any questions for Jason on that matter? Yes, Kevin.
Just that's already been passed. Is that what you said before, John?
We approved a huge schedule of fees earlier in 2020, and that was part of it. And it didn't click with me that was a change from the old percentage routine, I just overlooked it, so I just wanted some clarification, which has been provided, so. If there's no further questions, can I get a motion to receive that? Oh, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, Jason, way back prior to amalgamation, the township of Camden East used to collect a levy, a lot levy for recreational purposes. And we were informed that we couldn't do that, and we had to cease doing it at that time. And I'm just wondering if you remember anything like that, or correlation. And the reason we were told is, first of all, we may have used some of that money maybe for other things that had to be earmarked specifically for a project.
Through you, Deputy West. I'm not familiar with legislation that would have been prior to amalgamation, Councillor Davidson. That being said, if the levy, a levy is interchangeable in the language even today with respect to parkland reserves. So many of our colleagues and local tiers, lower tiers consider parkland reserves as parkland levies. So it may be a language inclusion. That said, there is the legislation respecting parkland funds is only able to be applied to municipal parks, recreational facilities, et cetera, and not used in the form of other development fees, like municipalities with development and impost charges, and dedicating those specific to new roads or sidewalk construction and or impost or sanitary or septic. But I do agree and acknowledge that parkland reserves are dedicated for that reason and sole purpose. So back to the Camden days, I would think that it would have been or should have been allocated specific to that type.
I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Anything further? Can I have a motion to receive that report? Doug and Wenda, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'll turn the gavel of power back over to Eric.
Thanks, John. We're gonna move on to number B, Treasurer Bouchard, the 2020 draft reserves, Stone Mills Township. Go ahead.
So what's attached in front of you is the draft reserve for 2020, and they balances as of December 31st. These are draft, they are unaudited, and they probably will still have additional changes. But this is for council information at this time.
Any questions for Christina? Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. A couple. Made a note of that. Oh yeah, there's a 27,000 and change in there, Christina, for the Camden East Library Reserve. As we know, the Camden East Library no longer exists, either in concept or very soon physically. What should we do with that money?
It'll be my recommendation that you combine that into our all department municipal building reserve. So any future development, wherever you choose to put it, that money can be allocated to whatever building instead of just a specific reserve. The idea is to condense your reserves and not have so many little tiny ones, as opposed to a nice big pool of money that you can say, okay, we know we put 27,000 away for the Camden East Library, but we want to rebuild the entire library, so we want to use our full departmental, I think it's called, I had it for me, all municipal buildings reserve, and we're going to use that full 800,000 to do so. So the idea is not to have all these little buckets and keep them all together. So that will be a recommendation I'll report later.
Okay, thank you. And the other one, we've got reserves for both Sheffield and Camden East landfill sites, and I didn't see any for Moscow.
So several years ago, before I came, you guys amalgamated, or council amalgamated, the Sheffield and the Moscow Reserve into one. I don't know the background on that. I just know that's what they did, but they left the name as Garbage Bag Reserve Sheffield. So that's where the Moscow and the Sheffield ones are.
Okay, that clarifies that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Wenda.
Similar to John's comment, the Camden East Library Reserve, what are you planning to suggest for that 27,000?
as previously mentioned, I'm gonna suggest that you move it into the all municipal building reserve, and then you use it for whatever you would like.
Is that what John was talking about?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the building itself. I didn't know, sorry. Redundancy.
Anything else for Christina? Being said, I make a motion to receive a report. Moved by Sherry, second by Debbie. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thanks, Christina. We will move to Stone Mill Public Works, 2021 itemized breakdown of projects. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. This reports the breakdown of the 2020 projects that we had revenues through either county works or any other outside works. Strong year again, 1.3, just over 1.3. 2021 looks like it's going to be a busy year again for us with projects, County Road 6 in our municipality and County Road 15. Is there any questions on those projects?
Doug, do you have something?
Yeah, just for clarification, County Road 6 is gonna be done this year, that 1 kilometer, that's 8 years overdue.
That's correct.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just a question for Jeff, maybe. Jeff, has there been any talk, and I know this isn't your bailiwick, but the stretch of County Road 1 between Strathcona and Newburgh, is there any plans through the county of redoing that section?
It would be in their 10-year plan. I'd have to look to see what year it is, but it is getting close. It's the only stretch that we don't have paved shoulders on as well.
Is it? I didn't even notice that, but it's rough, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Linda.
So on that stretch, are they planning to put paved shoulders?
The county capital program calls for paved shoulders on any new reconstruction.
Very good.
Okay, anything else on the budget items? Moving forward, we'll go to the surface treatment.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first is proposed surface treatment for 2021. As you can see, we have one road in there that we're going to do the micro on again. It seems to be performing well and perform well over the winter. There's a slight increase from what we normally do, but that was covered in the comments of the budget. By not doing any granular crushing this year, we're putting funds towards any culvert crossing, bridges, and extra surface treatment.
Any questions on that? Is it okay if council, I just ask one promotion at the end of this to do all these? Okay. This second, or sidewalk?
Sidewalk repairs or removals. This is our last of the 2014 inventory list of 4 locations. Just as a little side note, in 3 years, we've replaced 25% of our current inventory or removed. And roughly in 2020, we repaired 25 sections of, one panel here, one panel there, through our inspections.
Any questions? Go ahead, Kelly.
Again, I know it's county property, but we had talked before, Jeff, it's not a sidewalk, but shoulder pavement on Camden East. Like Joe Lewis's, that was supposed to be done a year ago or something. Is that in the budget or in the works for this year?
Yeah, we can fit it in. It's, I know what you mean, on the high shoulder from Johnson Street to the westerly limit of County Road 4. We had some issues there with, there's a catch basin or a ditch inlet on the backside to actually fit just a 1 meter paved boulevard in there. But we may have to adjust the lid and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? If there's none, we'll move ahead to the granular applied.
Granular applied, we actually added a little bit more than what we had budgeted for, but due to COVID and separation and having people in their own vehicle, we hit the target and got more granular on than we were anticipating. So moving forward to the next, the resurfacing for 2021, it's the tonnage that we're putting on is similar, but a little bit lower. And it's based on a 3 to 5 year program.
Any questions on that? Okay, moving forward, we'll go to line painting.
I got a couple of questions. Jeff, you've got Airport Road, Freeman Road, so you've got a whole list. We're planning on just resurfacing them with gravel this year, right? Okay.
That's correct. 2 to 3 inches of gravel.
Any more questions? Okay, now we'll go to granular resurfacing, no, line painting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Line painting, if anyone can remember, last year or the year before, I believe, we added a few roads to this inventory list with positive feedback. There's no new added this year. It's just maintaining and keeping up what we have currently.
Any questions on that? We'll move ahead to the noxious weed control program.
The map attached for this is our 3rd year spraying for noxious weeds, or better known as wild parsnip. This is the proposed list and a couple of hotspots. The next attachment is inventory or research that county student staffing had completed over the summer on the hotspots, and we're going to try and address them this summer.
Wild parsnip concentration, you just talked on that. Any questions of just sort of what we've gone over? If you have none, we're gonna move on to the next one. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to receive all the reports given under the road department. Moved by Kevin, second by Debbie. All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Go ahead.
Your Worship, now the plan is for the rest of the budget meeting, if councilors have their budget binders in front of them or wish to utilize the agenda package, it's entirely up to them. Christina, our treasurer, will provide, as we go through, we're intending to do a budget by budget review, departmentalized, and as we get to that department, our treasurer will guide you to that section of your budget book or your agenda page. So for the treasurer's benefit, I will have access to the online document or the one that's supposed to be a portal, and we will go through department by department, starting, I believe, with administration, which is the first budget.
So your 4th tab in is your operational budget, and that's where you'll want to start with the general government.
So the intention, Your Worship, is for council members to take a look at that budget line item, take a quick review. If there's any questions on any item inside that budget line on a page by page review, first one starting with general government, total general government revenue. We will, as staff, will attempt to answer those questions, provide clarification outside of those listed in the side comments.
You're gonna just go page by page here, Christina. So there's nothing on that page. You just do a page and then try to go to the next one. If there's something up, all stop it. Okay?
Okay, so first page is the general government.
Okay, Doug, you got something?
Yeah. Sorry, is it? I don't know one.
No. You need to go to the operational
That's what I did.
What page would that be? What we looked at here?
That would be page, this is operational page 1, which is actually, Are you trying to stay on your agenda?
No, like, what was on here? Because when I went through before, I marked down page numbers. And now I'm sort of confused as to.
It's the 10th page.
Okay.
Okay, Kevin,
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next one is your administration budget, that would be page 2.
go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up that question again about the, solar. I think it's on this page, sorry, I don't have the wrong solar one. The, solar on the garden is paid for. I wonder, do we need to at least set a small budget this year? I really believe we need to be, we talked about it last meeting, we need to be setting a budget item for a reserve fund for end of life of that contract, which is 8 years away. So whether we put $5,000 in it this year, or we make a line in to guarantee ourselves that we do it next year, or we have to start somewhere.
Was there a conversation on that before, Christina?
Touched on it last meeting.
Go ahead, Brad.
Councilor Davison and the rest of council, if you're amenable to that, we would like to task our properties manager with, in 2021, the task of presenting a report and its findings to council on what that decommissioning costs would look like. And then we would like to commence the planning for the decommissioning on an annual basis, which may require this year's contribution and next, on a 9-year basis towards that decommissioning value, if council would be amenable to that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And it may not be decommissioned. Those panels lose their value by about 0.5% a year. So we set aside money to get our own inverters, and maybe we can make use of that power ourselves. Or that's 9 years from now, so some of us may not be here. Yeah, good idea to have a reserve.
Okay, Chris, nothing on to go to page 3. Sorry, Jeff, go.
That's page 3.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Christina, the one, with the new bank, this may be reduced, however, the old bank is still running until all checks are clear. How long will that be here?
So
Or do you have an idea, you know?
So our last round of checks on the old bank is sent out in December. So it depends on how long it takes people to go in and cash those checks. They would be stale dated come June. So if people don't cash it before then, or if they're all cashed, we'll shut it down.
Right.
But we're still waiting on people to.
So it could be up till June.
Until June, yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, number 4, Christina.
Your next department is council on page 4.
Go ahead.
Next page is going to be your elections. You'll link in there your election reserve contribution. The following pages are IT department. Next page is your fire administration department, which will be page 7.
Anything on page 7 before we go to the next one? Go ahead, Christina.
Okay. Following page, next following 2 pages are the rest of the fire department. Page 10 is your police department. Page 11 is your conservation authority.
Your worship, I would just like to make a point, based on the information Deputy Wise provided at the last council meeting, that a $7,500 amendment should be made for this budget based on the information that was presented.
Everybody okay with that? Go ahead, Christina.
Okay. So page 12 is your building inspection and section 8 department.
Go ahead, Doug.
Not sure if this is the right place for it, but I'll ask him here. the two new vehicles we're planning on buying, and, and I'm all in favor of going, energy efficient vehicles. Are they EVs, straight battery, or are they hybrids that you're talking about?
You're allowed to know the answer.
Yeah, straight EVs, Doug. We're
Straight
planning on buying. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we are planning. Yes, Doug, we're planning on buying straight EVs, all-wheel drive electric, SUVs.
My reason for asking the question, Jay, is that, what's the range of the ones you're looking at? I mean, my understanding is about 240 kilometers. Is that adequate for running all over the township all day? Would you run that many or less? I'm just questioning whether, do we need a hybrid versus straight EV?
So, I have a 2008 truck right now, and it's got 214,000 kilometers on it. So, I'd be hard pressed to put 50 kilometers a day on the truck.
Okay, no problem. That's all I was concerned with. A lot of the new ones only got about 240 range so far, unless you get into Teslas or whatever. But,
The tender package that we've written up, Doug, has a minimum 300 kilometer distance. However, as anyone who knows any, is informed about EVs, if it's minus 20 outside, they're probably not going to go as far. So, but on a good day, they'll go 300. That's how we're rating up the package.
as long as you're not rating that much. Thank you.
Go ahead, Wanda.
So, back to the SUVs. We need two because what's the purpose for them? Like, what vehicles are being used to do that function or that purpose now? And do we need two, or would one suffice?
Yeah, so I'm using the 2008 pickup parked out front. We're adding another employee to my department, and he was going to have his own separate vehicle for doing inspections. That's why we're purchasing two.
Just one more question. A few years ago at one of the conferences, and I don't recall which one, they were really promoting green energy, and they were promoting, in an effort, the government in an effort to promote green energy, were offering a lot of different financial incentives and funds if you were moving in that direction. Have we looked into that at all to see if any funding for these vehicles could be through that type of initiative with the government?
Yes, Doug Ford essentially ended, thank you, Your Worship. Doug Ford essentially ended all provincial funding of EVs. So you're not going to get anything from him. And the vehicles we're planning on purchasing are outside of the echelon of cost. So we're not going to, at this point, get any funding from the federal government either, because the vehicles we're going to be buying are not Chevrolet Bolts, small cars, where you would get some funding.
Okay, Christina, I guess we can go to the next page.
So your next page is bylaw enforcement on page 13. Okay, following page is animal control. And then you have civic addressing. Livestock compensation is page 16. Fence viewing is page 17. Okay, page 18 is your emergency measures. Page 19 is your roads administration, and that carries on to page 20 as well.
Any questions on that page? Don't see any of this.
So page 21 is your equipment.
Sorry, guys, that's all.
Sorry.
On page 21.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I jumped in there. Yeah, it was, let's see, line 5307, which is licenses. 2020 budget was 40,000, and that's doubled for 2021. Is that because the license fees have gone up, or we're gonna have a lot more vehicles, or both, or what?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. In 2020, we didn't pay any licensing fees because of COVID. So when we go to get licenses, I expect to be paying that back.
So it doubles for a year.
I can argue the fact that we didn't drive them. I don't think it'll work.
They won't.
Yeah.
Parked or driven, it's still gotta be licensed. Okay, thank you.
To be revised, you'll see under the transfer from reserves at the top is a $40,000 reserve contribution. We took that value from 2020, put it into reserves, and are now pulling it back in
I
to
know
offset
that.
that other 40.
Thank you.
I guess you go, move ahead.
Okay, so the next one is page 22, and that's the accounting equipment. Page 23 is the county road administration. Page 24 is your street light.
Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Jeff, I don't see anything in there, maybe you got it built in. Do we have any streetlights for installation this year?
For municipal, no, we're not planning on adding any.
Not? Okay, I just, if you don't mind me asking, I've had a couple of requests for one or two on the east end of Camden East on County Road 1. It seems to stop, well into the village, like just past where I used to live, and the corner of that is not lit. So I'm wondering about a light on the corner, just thought I'd mention it.
So in our last maintenance agreement with the county, they took over all installation and maintenance and hydro fees for streetlights. So you'll see over the last couple of years that budget has been reduced. We just look after our own municipal road streetlights, where prior to the new agreement, it was countywide.
So, if we pass that, can't request, at least on the county?
I will.
Thank you.
I can bring it up to TAC.
Go ahead, Brenda.
A few years ago, we switched over to LEDs as a cost-saving adventure with some funding from the government. I was just wondering, do we know how much cost savings that has been now that they've been functioning for a couple of years?
I don't know off the hand our hydro costs, but I know our repair bills are next to nil. We might have 3 or 4 repairs a year. I can report back, get the county to report back with some actual numbers.
I'm just curious. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Lalonde, if I may, that number that we originally presented was going to be an estimate of approximately 40% of our streetlight costs, but that number is significantly different because there was such a savings that the county actually took back their streetlights as part of that initiative. So they contributed to pay for the upgrades for those streetlights. And then because they saw such a great savings in that plan, they actually took the ownership back so that they could realize the savings and ownership of those fixtures. So it was a good initiative in the sense that the county is saving money and in essence saves us dollars, but that number is going to be significantly less than we were proud to present 4 years ago.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. Are the street lights metered somehow? I thought it was just estimates based on wattage and so on and so forth. Like how you know specific numbers of savings? Is it just by looking at your overall hydro bill and comparing it to previous years?
Deputy Wise, the answer to that question is previously with the previous fixtures, you were billed at the highest hourly rate based on an estimate. So I believe at the time it was approximately 12.2 cents per kilowatt hour, which was the highest billable rate. And they took an annual estimate for the year, and that's how the streetlights were billed. As part of the LED retrofit project, they had a lighting engineer actually do an analysis and complete that output, which they then used that electrical engineer data to then create the rate. So it was down around anywhere from 6.8 to 8.4 cents per liter. So they were actually able to use the output from the ballast and the fixture to create that rate, get Hydro to sign off on it, and that's what in essence reduces that rate of an LED fixture.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, move on, Christina.
Okay, so page 25 is your Newburgh waste rate. Page 26 is Camden East waste disposal. Page 27 is Sheffield.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
We're done, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it should have been more involved. Line 5200 on the Camden East page is called services. And we budgeted $7,000 in both years, but in between, we've got unaudited figures of 20,700 approximately. I wondered what that figure meant and what that discrepancy is all about.
So in 2019, our actuals in that account were a lot lower than we had predicted because the engineers didn't bill us until 2020 and our year was already closed. So that's why it looks a little funny.
Okay. That's the consultants? Yeah. Okay, I think there's similar ones.
Yeah, it goes all the way
Sheffield.
through.
Yeah, okay, then I won't bother bugging you about Sheffield and Moscow. I had similar notes for them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so Sheffield was page 27. Page 28 is the Moscow waste disposal. Page 29 is your Camden East recycling.
Go ahead, John.
And again, that services is the same reason.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Page 30 is Sheffield recycling. Page 31 is your Moscow recycling. Page 32 is your Parks and Recreation. Page 33 is your swim program.
Just a question.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I saw on some Facebook page that whoever was doing the swim program before, Al, maybe isn't gonna do it. Have you heard anything about that?
You know, it's sure that I've seen the same thing on Facebook, they're looking for somebody to organize it.
I had a call from the coordinator and she was gonna reach out and talk to Al, but it's time.
Yeah.
Call today, so.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Page 34 is the Stone Mills Recreation Center. And 35 is that as well.
Right, Mr. Townsend, was the medical for the firefighters put into the fire that's being looked at? Can you explain what I mean by that?
Sure, through your worship, medical fee in the past, firefighters would have to pay $100 medical to renew their license. We increased the budget slightly in that line item to cover the costs for their medicals.
Thank you. Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so that was page 34, 35 for Stone Mills Recreation Center. Page 36 is the rooftop solar project. This is the one that is paid in full for the loans. Page 37 is the planning department. Page 38 is properties management.
Go ahead, John. You just take your time.
Yeah, line 5200. Yeah, the notes to the right of that. Backup generator for small tower building on Basket Hill, $5,000. Sorry, Yeah, $5,000 for a small tower building in Basket Hill. What is that for? I don't recall that from any other budget.
Through your worship, so we have a small outbuilding on the top of the Basswood Hill that houses our radio communication equipment for the fire department and the police department as well. It does have a slight battery backup, but we've had a couple of issues in the past where a power outage has happened and the battery backup isn't sufficient enough. And that is our primary paging system as well. So if we lose power on that, then our pages can't go out for calls, and therefore we run the chance of not receiving a call. So a backup generator would be installed that would kick on automatically if the power was out to provide power for that communication equipment, so that we would have zero downtime, hopefully, in the case of a power outage.
And that would obviously kick in automatically if there's a failure or something like that, James?
That's correct. There's an automatic transfer switch. So as soon as the power kicks off, then the generator starts up. So we would be talking a matter of 30, 40 seconds by the time the generator kicks on and starts up.
So that little building that's at the foot of that tower, is that our building? That's the only reason it's there, is for our system.
Yeah, so there's a blue steel building in there. That's our building, and then there's another concrete sort of type structure which houses the telecommunication equipment that's in there. I think by the internet service providers on the east side. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've never looked that closely. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Is that a propane generator you're referring to?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nothing else? Just go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so page 39 is the medical center, and that's the conclusion of the operating section. So if you want to flip to the next tab.
Go ahead, Brian.
Your worship, there's one other topic for discussion that I think that some council members had suggested through the last meeting and through correspondence, and that was consideration of a part-time benefit in the form of whether we call it clothing or boot allowance, et cetera, for landfill operators and the arena workers. So that has come by way since our last meeting, and I just wanted to put that out for consideration of council, something similar to $100 or $150 per year for a part-time benefit that would be utilized, whether that's for boot or clothing attire, for landfill and for our arena staff, for council's consideration if they wish to consider that.
Any thoughts on that from council members?
Well, I think it's a good idea. In our earlier conversation, we covered most of the employees, but part-time people weren't talked about, so, and maybe wear boots there too.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Wanda.
I agree with that completely. I think this is a really good idea.
I guess go around the table, everybody's in favor of that?
What's the amount? Do we have a specific, instead of 120, 150?
So there are two topics for consideration. Ideas that have been thrown out there. The municipality allows a full-time employee $200 for a boot allowance. If it was a boot allowance consideration, the discussion was maybe half of that, or if council wished to contribute towards something similar of the self-administered benefit, then half of that would be $150. So they were the two ideas that were thrown at me for consideration, and I said that I would put them in front of council for consideration as part of the next budget meeting.
I think 150 sounds fair.
Kevin?
Is that just the people that work at the landfill? Is that who you're referring to, right?
Councilor Richmond, that was originally how the request come in was for the landfill, but through discussion with the individual, if we should implement a system like that for our landfill, we should do the same for our arena employees, as the arena employees actually probably work more serviceable hours, although it's in a shorter period. Over the course of the year, they work a longer period. So we would, any of our part-time, which I think is approximately 8 per year, does that sound right, Al? Approximately between student and adult employees, approximately 8 additional. And I think our landfill numbers as a pool, we would have how many, Jeff? 9 of them, so we be talking potentially 17, so maybe a $2,500 budget item across the entire budget.
Does that include the people, British Railways Parks, schools?
Yeah, very good point, your worship. I'm missing, again, if we wish to include those, we have part-time or seasonal employees that we have for the Public Works Department as well as the ones in the summer as well with that. So potentially 20 employees, so maybe that looks like, $3,000 a year collectively in the budget.
A moment ago, don't you agree with that? You still with all these people involved?
I can go, either 100 or 150, whatever you expect. They was half the time of regular employees, but still we're losing them.
Never rewind, you suggest 150, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody okay with 150? Okay, I guess that's the census. Thank you. Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so your next tab is your capital budget. The first page on there is the administration. Your next page is the fire administration. Okay, your third page is the building inspection, which is the 2 electric SUVs that we discussed. Page 4 is emergency measures and general capital. Page 5 is the roads administration. Page 6 is your equipment capital. Page 7 is the road construction capital. And that follows on page 8 as well.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Is it on page 6? Is it on page 6 going back, where you're going to trade in the rubber loader? Is that the one that was just purchased, what, a couple years ago? Or how long is that?
Through you, your worship, it's a 2016 rubber tired excavator. It just reached over 6,000 hours.
Is that our oldest one?
It's our oldest one and only one.
You have something else, Kevin?
Yeah, just, so you're looking at trading it in, Jeff, and getting a newer.
The trade-in, when we're putting 1,000 hours a year on it, we can't really afford for it to be down. So before we get into repairs, so there's some trade-in value left in it. I thought it was wise to replace it this year.
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so page 7 and 8 is your construction capital for growth. Page 8 is the county construction capital. We don't have a breakdown on that yet. Following page is your street light. There's no capital being spent there. Page 11 is your Camden East waste disposal. Page 12 is Sheffield waste disposal. Page 13 is Moscow waste disposal. Page 14 are your recycling for Camden, Sheffield, Moscow. Page 15 is your parks and recreational capital. Page 6, oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, that dock at the park, is that the floating dock you're talking about? Yeah. What happens to the old one? Is it just junk?
Yeah, stolen from my place.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, the reason we're getting rid of, thank you, your worship. Yeah, John, the reason we were getting, have you walked on this dock lately?
No.
It's highly really sunburned on the top. But you just go like this because the center that holds everything together have been worn from just probably being used and brought in and out. And also just wave action, over the course of, I think it's around 40 years old. And now when you step on one, they're 2x2 pieces that all interlock. It's so flexible that one goes down and the other two around it stay up, or the other three around it stay up. So that's why it's basically not hardly safe to walk on anymore. It's fun for the kids, but not fun if you want to stay afloat. So anyways, yeah, we're planning on replacing essentially with the same dock that we've had before, same company. 40 years for a dock is a pretty good lifetime.
Yeah. What are we doing with the waste? That sounds a lot of junk. Can we put that in our?
Oh, I wasn't planning on paying somebody to take it away or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on that over there? Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, so page 16 is your recreation center capital. Page 17 is your rooftop solar capital, and there isn't any. And page 18 is your planning capital, and there is not any. And page 19 is your property management capital. And your last page, page 20, is your medical center capital.
Good job.
Yeah, any word on the application for funding for that project?
I haven't received anything yet.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Christina.
And that is all of the pages.
Thank you.
Treasurer Boshaw, could you please, do you have a copy of the budget there in front of you on your computer?
Yes, it
Can
is.
you make the following changes that were presented, which is the $7,500 equity conservation increase under the capital project? And then a $3,000 budget line item, just for numbers sake this evening, if we can place that under the landfill or under the note somewhere of that nature for the $3,000 line item for the part-time benefit to be administered from. We can put that into a department. I just would like council members to be aware of what the impact of the tax rate would be with those changes. And then we council direction.
Do you have something, Doug?
Yeah, just a question, going back to what was mentioned earlier about the waste sites there, about the reserve for Sheffield and Moscow. Can we just add Moscow to that reserve site so that they don't get lost somewhere in the translation?
You mean just add the word Moscow to it?
Yeah, so that the money for those that doesn't get lost. Yeah, Christine, I went looking, trying to find the Camden East Library money in the reserves. I can't find it. Can you direct me to it? I'm talking about the 700,000 plus that we received for the demo of the library.
Yes, I can. So on page 1 of the reserves, very bottom line, it says all municipal buildings reserve, 833,000. That is in that number. The 707,000 that we received is in that number. Very last line on page 1 of reserves.
I see that. I'm a little concerned with that all being lumped together because at least some of that money I had expected that we would be putting back into Camden East in that property. So I'm a little concerned about that. If nothing else, I would still like to see the post office built there and a parquet built on that property when it's cleaned up. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, thank you.
Speaking of post office, Jake, you heard anything about post office situation in the Camden East?
Thank you, Your Worship. I sent our contact who is managing essentially finding another location. And she said, her name is Omega Mighty, and she said that she was still in negotiations with two commercial entrepreneurs in Camden East. And so that was my update, that they're still trying to come and find a place, and then if that didn't work, they were going to come back to us. And
Okay, I'm sorry, that name is sort of caught me. Go ahead, Kevin.
So Jake, does that mean that, are they saying they don't want to build a post office if they get this, or is this a temporary thing they're looking for?
yeah, so how it came to be was they came to me in October, Kevin, Councilor Richard, and asked if we had a timeline for rebuilding. And at that time, we had just recently come to the conclusion that it had to be torn down, and I said that we had no fixed timeline for when that, a new building could be replaced, or even where that new building could be replaced. At that time, they were hoping to reopen as soon as possible, meaning within a matter of months, not a matter of a year or two. And so that's what led to them going to two other commercial zoned properties in Camden East and asking if they had a spot, or if they would entertain having a post office or have room to open a post office there. And they were just, it was all just timelines that led to that.
Okay. So we don't really know then whether they want a new post office or whether they're just interested in trying to get another commercial spot.
Thank you, Your Worship. The last communication I had with them, they were still negotiating with both of those owners in Camden East. And they were still in the process and hadn't given up. And we're still going to come back to us if they couldn't reach an agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that being said, I'm just gonna go around the table. If anybody's got any questions, tell the nature of the budget your call. And also get that done, I just like to see what council, with these changes, what are we still on the 1.25%, or are we gonna wait till back next meeting? That end out, are we comfortable with it or what? So anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead with Doug. If you have something that went first, we go.
Christina, when you look at the grand total of our reserve funds, how do you feel they compare to, we've got 3 years listed here. There's just a huge, big jump from 2019 to 2020. It's almost 2 million.
So part of that jump is the Camden East building money that's come in, which is your 700,000. Then there's also the fact that we didn't receive our trucks that we had purchased or that we plan on purchasing. So that money didn't come out of reserves, when in fact normally it would have. So that's why it looks so big at the moment, and it should go back down when we actually get bills for them. Thank you.
Okay, John, you got anything that you know of before we move on here?
Well, no, we've had a pretty thorough look at it, and we've dealt with a lot of little issues. I think the conclusion page of the section at the very beginning that we looked at last week, current 2021 municipal budget represents a 1.25% tax increase in dollars. That would be better expressed, I think, as saying the current 2021 budget represents a 1.25% increase in dollars. We're not talking about raising taxes by 1.25% because the increase due to growth is almost 1.75%. So as a result, it'll be a decrease in our tax rate of about 6%. So I don't think we can argue with that. Staff has done an excellent job of presenting a realistic budget. It hasn't been padded in order to, ask for the moon and accept the satellite kind of thing. I think it's an honest budget. that represents what we actually expect to spend. So I'm quite happy with what we've got at this point anyway.
Sherry, your thoughts on it?
No, I think it looks great. There's some new exciting things in there, and I don't think we made too many changes to make that.
Kevin?
No, move ahead. I think you're looking at a first reading and then we'll come back and deal with any other changes we need later. Yeah, I'm good with that.
I would like to see us hold it at what we said here. I know we added 10,000, so I'm wondering if we can find that 10,000 somewhere. I was thinking possibly of the convention budget. I don't think any of us are actually going to get to the conventions this year. So maybe something could be taken out of that, either way of that 10,000 we had. Maybe half of it or something like that. And I'd still need something for some seminars, online ones. Other than that, no, I'll be very glad to see that it comes in. I'm hoping that that there is no tax increase on this. That's Captain Hope. Somebody's told me that MPAC didn't raise the assessments this year. That would be a first for me. So anyways, I'm happy with what I see. We'll see how it turns out.
Debbie, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm pleasantly surprised at the increase that we've held, the 1.25%. I think it's amazing. The staff done a wonderful job, and with COVID and everything that's going on in the facility, it makes me very proud that still feels good to be at that number.
Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for raising another point of interest. Since our last council meeting and before this evening, we also received notification from the province that there's another $67,000 that's going to be allocated to municipalities in 2021 for COVID relief. The reason that it's not in front of you this evening is it doesn't have an impact on our budget unless we choose to subsidize expenses related to COVID. We already had those worked into our budget in the form of a $45,000 revenue with $45,000 in expenses. So there was no budgetary impact. Now that number will become those two numbers combined as a revenue, and those two numbers offset as an expense. We do have a responsibility to report on those, and there will be an expectation that we report on those COVID-related fundings, or fund and expenses, sorry, and we will have to explain that funding allocation at a later reporting requirement at the end of 2021. That notice will be on the council agenda of this upcoming council meeting as well.
Go ahead, Brenda, if you have any comments.
No, I'm good, thank you.
I think we've done an excellent job here, but I still, I think we sat around the table and had a goal of 1.25, and I would like to see if we can vote for that. If we can, we got first reading coming up next meeting, then we can see where the figures come and go from there. Okay, anything else, anybody? So, Ryan, what will be our next meeting, and let you take over here?
So with council's permission, I would now like to merge the budget process into our council systems, with the idea that we would have our first reading taking place next Monday, March 15th. And then we will progress as council deems appropriate, whether council wishes to do first reading and then second and third at a single meeting, or second and third at separate meetings. I will leave that up to the discretion of council. If by chance that we intend to do second and third at the first meeting of April, I would just ask the council move that at this upcoming council meeting so that members of the public have awareness and knowledge in advance of the passing of that budget. So at this point, we leave the process to council. We will ask for a minimum first reading this upcoming Monday, but the process and the readings following that will be at the discretion of council.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see first reading next meeting, or something comes up, or reveal what the center to, which gives us a chance to deal with it. Fair enough?
Yep. Can we just have a little statement out on any changes for me as I go through it?
Your worship, through you, we will have a treasurer's report. We will have a manager's meeting on this Wednesday. We will attempt to find the increase to the budget that was raised this evening inside a budget that can be sustained for next year. We appreciate the input as far as training, but we're attempting to not minimize our budget this year at the expense of having to put it back in next year. So we will challenge our managers to find that money in a sustainable budget so we don't see that increase in the next calendar year as well.
That being said, any more comments before we shut this meeting down? Okay, so I'm gonna ask for the confirming bylaw, motion confirmed by Jerry, second by Kevin, all in favor? Carried. A motion to adjourn, by Doug, by Dick, all in favor? Carried. Thanks folks for being.